We talked about this earlier. One of the really good changes in the past year has been an increased focus on the well-being of workers. Of course, the importance of human capital has been rising for decades. If you looked at the balance sheets of Fortune 500 companies in the 1970s, you'd see most of the value was in stuff, in land, plant, equipment, inventory, oil in the ground, resources. Today, that's flipped. More than 80% of the value on the balance sheet of corporations is intangibles, computer code, intellectual property, brand, all the stuff that's rooted in people. So people have become more important to the success of a company than they ever have been before. And the pandemic highlighted that by putting their safety at risk. Our next two guests are two people who understand that extremely well, so I'm very excited about it. Arianna Huffington, who is the founder and CEO of Thrive Global, and Nickle LaMoreaux, who is the Chief Human Resource Officer at IBM. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I'm going to ask you, since this is the last session of the day, I want to cast forward and get you both to put your crystal ball glasses on and tell us something surprising about the world of work that will be different 2 years from now because of the pandemic. And Arianna, I'll let you go first.
So, Alan, there are going to be many surprising things, but I want to focus on two. The first is a complete rethinking of the way we live and work, and especially when it comes to burnout, which had been seen before the pandemic as somehow an inevitable part of a successful career. And we're already seeing pre-pandemic the cost of burnout in terms of skyrocketing diseases like diabetes and heart disease, the mental health crisis. But the forced pause of the pandemic has made us really recognize the productivity paradox, that in fact we can build a world post-pandemic where human capital can be both more productive and less depleted and burned out. And the other element is around reskilling. There has been such a big conversation, even pre-pandemic, about new skills, about AI taking over all jobs and having to reskill workers. But we are discovering now that the most important reskilling has to be around resilience, around the ability to navigate constant change. Because maybe you can take a miner and make him a coder, but if you can't deal with the emotional disturbance that comes from shifting jobs, from dealing with uncertainty, this is not going to be a productive worker. So these are the two among the many areas that I see fundamental changes.
And I want to come back to both of those, burnout and resilience. But first, Nicole.
Yeah, so I have kind of two predictions for 2022. The first one is very much on this productivity paradox that Arianna spoke about. A lot of work is being done on hybrid, and the focus is on where work gets done. But I think there's a subtle difference, and we need to be thinking about when work gets done. So my prediction is this concept of 9 to 5. Post-pandemic, in 2 years, will no longer exist. And as my daughter, who's now a graduating senior, enters the workforce, that will be a concept she doesn't even understand, because flexibility will not just be about where, but will be about when. And then the second prediction I've got for 2022 is really around the skills point. And as we think about resiliency, I think one of the key skills that companies are going to look for in jobs is this point on continuous learning. Are you somebody who can not only keep up with the changing skills, but just as Arianna said, the changing context in which work gets done?
Yeah, so there's so much there to dig into, and we have so little time to do it. But I want to, Nicole, I want to stick with that point about the productivity paradox. Because if we give employees flexibility on where to work And if we give them flexibility on when to work, what happens to those things that we've been talking about, this notion that we have that we need people working synchronously together to create culture, to ensure collaboration, to create innovation? How do you make that formula work? And I would throw that to both of you.
Yeah. So first of all, synchronous work is going to be extremely important. And as you've heard throughout the conference, times to collaborate, problem solve, kind of roll up your sleeves and really get into items of work are going to be important. But what I'm challenging is, does that need to be in a 9 to 5 day? Could that be a team getting together as needed from 11 to 3? Those are the types of things we're going to have to think differently about. And it may not be every day. It may be every other day. So the fact that teams are going to need to come together is absolutely important. It's just how they do it is going to be fundamentally different. I think the other thing we need to remember as companies, that work is not about activities. It is about outcomes. And if you start thinking about work as an outcome, what is that team really trying to drive versus managing all the small tasks that lead up to it, you can also fundamentally bring some flexibility both on the time as well as where work gets done.
Yeah. Arianna, were you going to add to that?
Yes, I was just going to add that this is so true, and it really reflects something that Nicole has said that I love, which is not since the Industrial Revolution have we really rethought work. And that's very important because if you look at the Industrial Revolution, that's when we started revering machines. And after machines, revering software. And we are now beginning to realize that the human operating system is different. Downtime for the human operating system is not a bug, it's a feature. And when we recognize that, we see the connection between performance and recovery, between productivity and recharging, so that there is no trade-off between the two. The one supports the other. This is completely different from the way we've run both workplaces and what we celebrate. You know, we talk about you snooze, you lose. I'll sleep when I'm dead. You celebrate people who work 24/7, who are always available, even though all the data shows that if you're always available, you are not going to be operating from your best. You're not going to be as creative, innovative, or empathetic.
And Arianna, in your view, has the pandemic made the burnout problem better or worse? I mean, I hear people on both sides of that question.
Well, it has made it worse in the sense that there are even fewer boundaries between work and home, especially for working mothers who have to navigate homeschooling and work. But it has also made us much more conscious of the things we can leave behind. Like, how can we Marie Kondo our lives post-pandemic? Do we need all this travel? Do we need to have to sleep with our phone by our bed? You know, we are questioning a lot of assumptions, and we are seeing the results. And the fact that the SEC has a new rule around human capital of disclosures that they haven't had since 1977 around attraction, development, and retention of human capital is a very clear indication that all stakeholders are now involved. And Nicole's job is truly the most important job next to the CEO because everybody understands that the well-being of employees is central to the bottom line.
Well, congratulations, Nicole, for that. And I want to go back to something you both referred to, which is the skills challenge. We have seen an incredible acceleration of technology during the pandemic. Even before the pandemic, we knew the challenge of upskilling and lifelong learning was an enormous one. How in the world do we take that one on at the scale it needs to be taken on at?
Yeah, look, I would offer kind of two practical suggestions, particularly for the other corporate audience members. One is you need to have robust learning plans in your organization that allow people, and make it available, that allow people to make shifts between jobs. This is a responsibility of modern employers to make sure that there are opportunities for people to reskill and upskill. The second challenge I would put out there is around opening the aperture around what qualifies you for positions in your organization. At IBM right now, more than 50% of our jobs do not require a 4-year degree. We are focused on the skills that individuals have. With skills shortages, we cannot put artificial barriers into who can have jobs in our workplace.
Yeah, it's so important. I think both of you have really put your fingers on the most important challenges for the next few years. I thank you very much for taking the time to be with us and give your thoughts at the closing of this conference. Thank you, Arianna. I'm going to go recharge right after this ends, and thank you, Nicole. IBM's really taken a lead role in this reskilling challenge.
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.